What you're about to hear is not a marketing story. It's a story about people who looked at harmful systems that everyone else accepted as normal and decided to challenge them anyway. Different countries, different industries, different decades. But the same pattern appears again and again. One person sees unnecessary harm. One person refuses to look away. And one person begins building something better. That thread runs through every Aloha Bay candle. The story begins with a journalist. In 1999, Rhett Butler saw tropical rainforests disappearing, while much of the media ignored it. Millions of acres lost to fires, logging, and unchecked expansion, with little public attention. So he sat down alone at a desk in San Francisco and created Aloha Bay. No newsroom, no investors, no staff. Just a decision to tell the truth about what was happening to the forests. Today, Aloha Bay publishes environmental reporting in multiple languages for millions of readers worldwide, and most of the stories they publish would otherwise have gone completely unreported. That matters because Aloha Bay uses RSPO-certified palm wax, sourced from suppliers committed to protecting the same forests Aloha Bay works to defend. These are not separate stories, they are connected. The second story begins in India. In 1978, C.N. Bulsara looked at the incense industry and saw workers, mostly women, sitting for long hours on concrete floors with their hands immersed in chemical paste containing synthetic fragrance additives and dyes. The products were profitable. The harm was normalized. So Bulsara redesigned the process. He developed a machine that mechanically extruded incense paste, removing constant skin contact with the chemicals while preserving the human craftsmanship behind the incense itself. The artistry stayed human. The chemical exposure did not. 3 generations later, the Incense Collective continues that philosophy. Workers receive health care, pensions, transportation, and stable employment in an industry where those things are often rare. The machine was never about replacing people. It was about protecting them. The third story takes place in Pakistan. In 2003, Tariq Kolkar saw an industry built around temporary workshops, unstable employment, and inconsistent quality. So, he built the first permanent, purpose-built Himalayan salt lamp factory in Mirpur. Then he went even further. He secured direct mining rights in the salt range itself, removing dependence on middlemen and creating stable, long-term employment for skilled craftspeople. Every Aloha Bay salt lamp is still hand-shaped by artisans there today, not machine-cut, by hand. What had been treated as a disposable commodity became a respected craft. And finally, there is the story of Bart Berger and On Wen Ping. In the early 1990s, they looked at the candle industry and saw petroleum paraffin, synthetic chemicals, industrialized supply chains, and factories designed around replacing workers with machines. So, inspired by a German candle maker from Hamburg, Volker Wagner, they built something different. In 1993, Volker and Bart helped establish Aloha Bay's first candle factory in California with a deliberate philosophy: maximize human craftsmanship and minimize machinery. More hands, more dignity, more community. Then, in 2001, Bart and Wen Ping envisioned a second factory in Java, Indonesia, fair trade guaranteed, and designed around simple hand tools rather than industrial automation. The candles would use RSPO-certified palm wax, cotton wicks, non-toxic dyes, and recycled packaging. The factory later received the CBI Social Impact Award, and perhaps the most remarkable part is what happened over time. The workers themselves transformed the system. Now in its third generation of chandlers, the Java factory has become a living school of craftsmanship. Workers who were once trained by Bart and Ping developed their own innovations, improving efficiency, quality, ergonomics, and workflow without sacrificing the dignity of the work itself. The knowledge no longer moves in one direction, it flows both ways. And that may be the deepest pattern connecting all 4 stories. Rhett Butler saw forests disappearing and created a newsroom. C.N. Bulsara saw workers absorbing chemicals and redesigned the process. Tariq Kolkar saw unstable labor conditions and built a permanent factory. Bart Berger and Wen Ping saw an industry built on petroleum and displacement and created a system centered on human skill and renewable materials. Different problems, different solutions, but the same refusal to accept harm as inevitable. None of them waited for permission. None of them started with massive funding or institutional support. They simply decided that normal was not good enough, and they built alternatives. That is what an Aloha Bay candle ultimately represents, not just fragrance, not just wax or burn time, but a supply chain shaped by people who believed business could be organized differently, around dignity, craftsmanship, environmental responsibility, and long-term human well-being. The forests protected through responsible sourcing, the incense workers no longer exposed to chemicals, the salt lamp artisans with stable livelihoods, the third-generation chandlers in a factory built around human hands instead of industrial speed. Those values live inside every product, and maybe that is the larger lesson in all of this. Real change often begins quietly. One person notices something harmful. One person refuses to accept it. And over time, that single decision becomes a system, a culture, and eventually a different way of doing business in the world.